The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello, I'm Carl Seidel, host of The People's View. The show is sponsored by the Nashua City Republican Committee, and if you like to attend our meetings, they're the second Thursday of every month at 6:30 at the Crown Plaza. And if you want to find out more about our organization, you can go to nashuagop.org to see our website and learn about the events that we have.
Welcome to The People's View.
Hello and welcome. Help me, I'd like to introduce Tracy Hatch, as President and CEO of the Greater Chamber of Commerce in Nashua. Is that right?
That is.
Okay, that sounds like a bit nice organization. How big is it?
We're just over 500 members,
Wow.
Large and small companies from the Greater Nashua region. So not just Nashua proper, but all of the communities around Nashua as well, with a pretty broad range of industries and business types.
And you've been in this position now for 2 years?
Coming up on 3 years.
Oh,
and actually,
okay.
I was with the chamber before, so this is kind of my second go-around in a different position, and absolutely loving it.
Yeah, I was going to say, it seems like you're enjoying it.
I
I've
do.
been at your session with the legislature. And
Always a fun event for us.
Yeah, yeah. So, and you have another meeting soon, too?
We do actually tomorrow, or coming up, we have our economic outlook lunch where we look at what's going on across the state and the region from an economic perspective with Taylor Caswell, the new commissioner of the Department of Business and Economic Affairs. Will be coming in and talking.
Okay.
So that'll be interesting, and more legislative affairs as we keep going down through the session.
Well, on the economic package, what can you tell us from your perspective right now? How is business doing here in Nashua as the rest of the state?
Seems to, from what we are seeing, with new members joining and a fair amount of vibrancy in the business community right now. I've had the opportunity to hear Commissioner Caswell speak a few times over the last couple of months, and I echo, I think, what he talks about and the way he talks about it, that it's important for us to look positively at what we're doing. There's a demand for skilled workers. To me, that's a positive. That makes New Hampshire an attractive place for young people coming out of college, people may have gone and explored another part of the country for a while, now looking to come back to Nashua. Makes us a very attractive place to come find a really good, well-paying job. So
Place for grow a family.
Exactly. I can understand. And I'll point to my own 3 kids, but graduated and want to go see a bit of the country before they decide where they're going to spend the rest of their life. Love New Hampshire, enjoy coming back and visiting. And I think when they come back, they bring a different perspective and maybe a deeper appreciation for what makes our state so great. So I'm not as anti leave the state for a little while for college, because I think we are such a great state that they'll come back.
Oh, yeah, you have a lot of good things. You have a nice city to the south if you want some major entertainment. And, of course, you have the Patriots.
Absolutely.
People.
Patriots, Red Sox, Bruins.
There you go.
We're all happy across the board.
Not too many cities can have that many championships.
That's true. Yeah.
What level are the businesses looking for? I mean, is it line work, or is it scientific work, or is it?
I think there's really a combination. Certainly, there are a lot of high-tech IT type jobs, high-tech manufacturing, really skilled positions that are open and available. There's also a huge demand in the trades, and I hear that over and over and over again. Electricians and plumbers and pipe fitters and all of those different trade-related jobs that can be incredibly well-paying positions, and there's an understandable desire on the part of parents to see their kids go and get a higher education, and that's important. I don't want to discourage that. But for some kids, that's not a natural path, and they have inclinations in other areas, and the trades and the work that Nashua Community College and our community college system does towards that. And the technical institutes.
A lot of small businesses are started by people who graduated from community colleges.
Exactly. Yep.
And I know from we look over the budget for improvements in in both the colleges and the community colleges. They've done an excellent job over the last 6 years in expanding the techniques that they have.
They really have, and I look, and obviously the one I'm most familiar with is Nashua Community College, and what Lucille Jordan has been able to do as the president of that college. But looking at the partnerships that she's formed with local businesses, Rapid, for example, I know worked directly with Nashua Community College to develop some education programs geared specifically towards workers they needed. So they'll send a pool of workers, they get their skills improved, and they stay local. So there's a great opportunity there, I think, for partnerships between our education system and local businesses.
And I think they've spread it around, too, to the other ones, Manchester and further north. Each one seemed to pick a specialty.
Yes.
And I think that was a good idea.
Yeah, there have been some, like I said, some really good partnerships, and that's certainly an area, the trades, highly skilled. And believe it or not, we do have demand in some of the lower skilled, more labor intensive positions that people don't necessarily want anymore. And so there's some demand there as well. So I think kind of across the board, if you're looking for a really good, well-paying job in New Hampshire, we've got them.
Yeah.
And that's to go back to Taylor, to Commissioner Caswell. That's a lot of his message. It's not doom and gloom.
Right.
Oh, woe is us, we don't have good workforce. It's no, we have lots of opportunity. We're a place to come if you're looking for a great career.
Have you heard anything about one, I guess it's semi-negative, that a lot of the kids have to take some remedial classes when they go there?
You know, I've heard that, and I haven't delved too deeply into the specifics of that data. A question I'd have is it happening for kids who aren't necessarily on a college track? In other words, is it across the board? Are our high schools really failing our kids that much? And I'm just going to, again, I know Nashua's schools really well. Bishop Girton, my kids all went through public school here, and I know the kids who are coming out are, there's all the opportunity there in the world for them to graduate with the skills that are needed, whether they're going to college or they're going directly into employment. So I just don't know enough about that to know where
3 or 4 years ago, there was a report out, and that was what generated it. And I was just wondering whether you had heard anything from the businesses that there was a lacking in certain areas.
I'll tell you the area that we hear often, and I sit on the advisory board for Granite State College, which works a lot with non-traditional students, so not necessarily coming right out of high school into college, but may have been in the workforce for a couple of years first, or coming back to change careers and looking for new skills. And what we hear a lot as a gap is the soft skills. So the technical skills you can teach often, but how to communicate well, how to work in a team. You know, you and I were talking off camera about the need for cooperation. And for people who may have disparate or different ways of looking at a problem to be able to come together and solve that problem creatively. And those are the kinds of soft skills that I think employers are noticing a lack. And when you start to move from more entry-level, you know, first 10 years of your career into upper management, those real decision-making positions, that's where those soft skills become increasingly important. I know I'm always laughing at my kids, and I'm going to age myself by saying this, but you know, they're all from a text generation. So writing in a complete sentence, being able to hold a conversation one-on-one with a person, and not always digitally, not by text or by email, but you know, a real face-to-face. You'll learn an awful lot more about a person, and you build a better relationship with a person if you can do the one-on-one. So those are the kinds of things. And I don't know how you teach that by example in
Yeah.
high school. So that's one we do hear raised.
Well, I think somebody else must have recognized that I think the newest charter school in Nashua here is the Micro Society.
Yes, yeah.
And they have kids in the 3rd and 4th grade playing banker.
Learning how to form those relationships
That's right.
and how important that is to know the people and not just the number, if you
Right.
will.
How to
Yeah.
run a meeting or something
Exactly. How to get people to come together and instead of digging their heels in
like that.
and becoming more entrenched in their position, find ways to create a dialogue. Those are really important skills
more-
in a personal life,
right.
in professional, certainly within the
Definitely.
legislative
Yeah.
body. That's
Oh,
got to
yeah.
be a really critical thing.
Definitely. But this is a skill that's awful hard to quantify. I guess you have to sort of have people sort of live through life quickly, just so you see all
Yeah.
these things, get exposed to them, as you say.
And we all, as business leaders, as community leaders like yourself, we need to demonstrate that in our daily behavior as well.
Do you have any of that with your organization? Any kind of training?
We do actually. We run, and we're in our 22nd year, I believe, 22nd or 23rd. Leadership Greater Nashua is a program that we run, a year-long program, where we have 20 to 25 emerging leaders from Greater Nashua come in for a class a month, and they learn both personal leadership skills, shore those up, and they learn about our community. So they spend a day focused on a specific area. It could be healthcare. We have a day on government, entrepreneurship and economic development, healthcare. I hate to name the whole list because I know I'll forget something. With the idea that as they become leaders, as they decide they're going to be an elected official or run for office, or they want to join a board of a school or a local nonprofit, what are the things about the community they need to know to be an effective leader? It kind of helps them understand the checks, not just the checks and balances, but the give and take. You know, you'd love to be everything for everyone, but that's not always realistic. So how do those major sectors interact with each other? And who are the leaders in those areas today? So we bring those leaders in, they get a chance to meet them, and every class does a project. So they give back something collectively to the city of Nashua.
I see. So some like
Some examples?
yeah.
Some of them have been more one-time things. Go help
Sure.
a local nonprofit rehab a facility, for example. One of the ones that many of your viewers may be familiar with is Legacy Playground. So that was a project, a long one, that took about 4 years from start to finish to create a playground for the city of Nashua that was really accessible to people who may have some sort of a disability, to make it a welcoming place for the community as a whole. And that was a very successful project. We had another class going back probably 6 or 7 years that, as part of their tour on Education Day, toured Keefe Auditorium over at Elm Street Middle School. And one of the things that came out of that was how challenged the acoustics and the sound systems were there. And they decided to do something about it and did a benefit concert, brought in the Indigo Girls, and raised about $75,000,
Wow.
which was given to the school to upgrade the sound system there. So projects really kind of run the gamut.
You know, I can go back there.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone will be able to hear, which raises another interesting. You know, you talk about the arts and the impact that the arts have on a community, and an issue that the chamber's been very involved with over the last couple of years, as the ideas have kind of percolated their way up, is a performing arts center for Nashua, and we are excited at the opportunity that presents for our community.
But there's still a little bit of an argument whether that's the best location.
I guess there is, and in my opinion, I think it really is a great spot. You know, it's downtown, so it's close to.
Oh, the spot is good, yeah.
It's close to a lot of the activity that you want going on. I know parking's always an issue, but there's 1,600 to 1,800 parking spots within about
Yeah.
a 4-block radius
Right,
of that
right.
proposed site. Is it going to take some work to make that site work? Yep. Which is always going to happen when you take a building from one purpose and convert it to be used for something
Sure.
else. But that can be among the most exciting pieces, to see a building that's been going
Shoe
back
store?
to Miller's. Well, and before that
yeah.
to Miller's,
Yeah.
when I first moved to Nashua. So really, that building's held some of the great businesses that have happened, real cornerstone businesses of the community for generations. Family-owned, family-operated, heavily invested in our community. And so it's kind of exciting to see that potential for that same legacy, for that building to continue to be a real cornerstone for our community.
I agree. I've been back to Lowell, Massachusetts, because I used to live in Chelmsford, and they've done quite a lot with the downtown, and I still belong to the theater thing down there.
And the impact that has on our community.
Very much
Some
so.
of the facts and figures that led us to really take a position in favor of it. You look across the state, and the American Council for the Arts study that came out last summer, I believe, that pointed to Portsmouth. And, on an annual basis, and Portsmouth obviously is a mecca in our state for the arts. You look at what goes on there. But over $58 million a year in economic growth, economic income to Portsmouth, directly attributable to having those arts organizations there. If we could see half that in Nashua, think about what that would mean for our community.
Well, is the chamber going to continue some of the programs they have in the street of Nashua?
The movies and things we've had, those have been a lot of fun to have. I know Great American Downtown is kind of relaunching a music series. I shouldn't say relaunching, but it was a music series a number of years ago, and it stopped for a few years, and they really want to bring music back downtown. We do our dinner and a movie series where we show films outside and connect the local restaurants with that. So we're really committed to doing what we need to do to highlight the businesses that are in our downtown and bring people downtown to enjoy what we have to offer.
I've always liked some of the things that you run during the Christmas.
Yeah.
And the period there, but does bring, it gets the community together.
It does, and I tell you, although it's hard, you get the wintertime, and people tend to stay indoors more than outdoors, but you see people out walking around, and I know, and I don't live too far from downtown, and often we'll just walk downtown. It's about a 1.5 mile commute for me, and walk down in the snow and go sit at a local restaurant and have a nice bite and a nice warm drink, and so you see people who come out for things like that. It really does build that sense of community.
Well, what do you think of the city's plans for the river and the river walk and everything?
That's you look at the potential that's there with there are cities that would give their, I don't know, say their left leg or whatever for a river to run right through the middle of their city. So I think the city's made an investment from a personnel perspective with Madeleine Minot, who is the city's riverfront or waterworks director. I'm not sure I'm getting the title exactly right, to really look at what we can do with our downtown, with our waterfront. And although I have not read it in depth yet, I think it was in November or October, they released the waterfront plan, so what they're looking at to do and what we can expect for enhancements there. And that's a major investment for the community, for the city. So I'm sure that we'll be taking a long, hard look at what goes on there. But when you tie that in and you think about the Broad Street Parkway going over the river, I know that there's certainly some enthusiasm and a few local Nashuans heavily promoting the idea of a boat launch down off the river. You look at what's happening with the Renaissance development over on the Hudson line there, and what might happen, or what is happening with that.
Well, yeah.
And how many
right
people,
there's
a lot of housing things going on in Nashua today.
Yeah. I've It's going to be a mini San Antonio?
Wouldn't that be nice? Or I grew up in Rhode Island, so
Oh,
I've been
okay.
back to Providence a few times and
Yeah.
seen what they've done with their
Yeah.
riverfront, kind of opening that up and what an impact that's had on the community. I will say what those kinds of projects, and I'm not as familiar with San Antonio and what it took there, but that's not just, I know specifically with Providence, that's not just one local community doing it on their own. That requires private endeavors, businesses getting involved, and local dollars and state dollars and federal dollars. So to me, that's the kind of investment that we really should be looking at. You see the huge lasting impact that can have.
Well, it's a long time down, just use San Antonio. I was there when they were just starting, and they were just cleaning up an area, essentially. And I went down last year, and they're still expanding. It's amazing how it grows and grows and grows.
Well, growth,
Yeah.
growth begets growth.
Yeah.
We were talking to some of the people involved with the Palace Theater, and the amount of economic development that's gone on because of the communities, the city's investment in that theater and what's gone on. And so you see it happen, and it happens in one block, and then all of a sudden it expands to a second block or a third block. And that's the kind of investment that you want to see. Everyone wants to be part of a winning proposal. So, and I look at Nashua, and you go back, and everything goes in cycles. But I can remember, when Michael Buckley opened Michael Timothy's I think just over 20 years ago, if memory serves, and how that sparked a real resurgence of some incredible restaurants. And nightlife going on in Nashua. And it often takes that visionary person who says, I'm not going to wait for everybody else. There's something I want to do, and I'm going to put my stake in the ground, and I'm going to make that happen. And look what's happened as a result of that, how much we've got.
Do you think this new issue of public-private planning of projects might do that and help Nashua grow?
Yeah, I do. I think that you can't look to just one source of funding. You can't look to just one source of ideas or enthusiasm. And it really does take a combination of the business community, community activists and leaders, and government all working together to make something happen. The ideas don't all lie completely within the business sector, and the money doesn't lie completely within the government sector. There's room for both there. So watching that happen, commuter rail is a place where I know Nashua is certainly working on a public-private partnership there, and see how that might play out.
Yeah, I think Manchester might somehow get involved with that also. The rail would go at least from the airport down to Lowell. And one of the things that's I'm looking at it for an improvement in the timeline of putting something. Businesses are more interested in time because time's money, and they want to get any project done fast. And supposedly, there's supposed to be the ability to work without having the slow movement of what I would call government bureaucracy. And do you think that's going to be effective? Because I haven't seen that really take effect yet, but I don't expect it to for another couple of years. But if they work it right, we'll see growth a lot faster.
I do agree, and I think one of the things that Governor Sununu is focused on in his first year is really taking a look at the regulations and requirements across a broad range of industries. How many of those are really necessary, how many of them are contradictory to each other, and really put barriers in place rather than encouraging it. Nobody wants an unsafe work environment. Nobody wants to put somebody in jeopardy or anything like that. But there comes a point when we regulate ourselves out of business, and that's not something that you want to see happen. So I think allowing some creativity, maybe having some pilot-type programs to see what happens when you relax some regulations, is where is it? Where do some need shoring up? Where really have we put barriers in place of businesses growing, people having jobs, and opportunities coming forward?
And it's just the schedule that they work on. You know, if, sometimes the regulatory board only works once a month or has hearings once a month.
So it's a built-in time slowing down factor. Yeah, and I know there's some pieces of legislation that I'm going to forget the details, but I know there's 3 or 4 we're looking at the chamber that would have the effect. I think the intent is not to slow things down, but would have the effect of really slowing progress down in ways that I don't think we want to do. So I think we need to be careful, but I think we can do that without saying no to things.
It just reminded me, in 2010, we had a Rules and Regulations subcommittee up there in the legislature looking at how the state runs a lot of the regulatory. We found a lot of problems that just the approach that people had. You know, you're working with these people. They're your customer. They're not coming to beg for favors or anything, but they do want to move along. And I think that changed for a certain amount, but there's still that. I think, as you said, Governor Sununu is looking into that right now, and he's looking at reorganization because I think that's necessary. But from the chamber's point of view, maybe you could collect that information, because one of the things we had a problem is getting information from the people who are being affected by it. And you have...
And that's absolutely a role we can play,
That's
yes, because
right.
we have that direct communication with our business members to know where that impact
And so
is going to be made.
if that committee gets started in the state, or maybe even working with the Board of Aldermen here in the city, you can focus on some of the issues that they should pay attention to.
Absolutely.
I'm not trying to criticize anyone, but it's always there. And unless you look at it systematically, you can't correct it.
You can't correct it. You're absolutely right.
So, you know something? We're all done.
That was the fastest half hour of my life. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
Well, we'll have to do it again.
Absolutely.
And you can name the time and when there's a big issue, and we can talk about it a little bit more.
I'd be delighted to come back.
Okay.
Thank
Well,
you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.